بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وكل من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. سبحانك اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك العليم الحكيم. وبعد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor and a privilege. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. Alhamdulillah, with this online webinar organized by our very beloved online institute, Rayyan Institute. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the organizers at Rayyan Institute, all the brothers and sisters who have put in the effort to make this program, this webinar possible today. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here with you today on Sunday, inshallah. Wherever you are in any part of the world, we're going to, inshallah, talk about a very important topic. As you can see, the title, Sexual Relations in Marriage, Significance and Islamic Guidelines. This is a very important topic, and this is why many people have, inshallah, registered. And people do have an interest in this topic. Everyone can probably see the slides. We have the title, which is Sexual Relations in Marriage. There are a few points. I want to talk about this topic, brothers and sisters. Summarize it into a few points, inshallah, and then maybe we can take question and answers later on. Sorry, yeah. Before we start, inshallah, if you can see, first things first, this is a very, very important discussion I want to do with you. One of the issues that we face today in our communities is that this topic of intimate sexual relations, some of you may have realized that, look, even the title is just very direct. I was thinking, what title to give this particular seminar, this topic, intimate relations, or husband-wife relations. Intimate relations could have been a possibility, but the point is that none of these actually determine exactly what we're talking about. When we say intimacy is a bit of being lovey-dovey with one another, husband, wives, showing love. That's also intimacy. But this is the reason why I wanted a title which is direct to the point. Sexual relations. There's no other meaning of sexual relations between spouses. And this is why the first point is this, that talking about sexual relations in marriage, of course, this is all about marriage, sexual relations. Discussing this, learning about this, does not go against modesty, haya. I think in some of the cultures for far too long, what's been happening is that this topic is a taboo. People don't even want to discuss this topic. It's like, it's considered to be something that goes against haya, piety, religious decorum, morality, basic ethics. This is what it's sometimes thought of. And because of this, when people are shying away from this topic, too often people shy away from this subject. They deprive themselves from an important aspect of the teachings of Islam. Okay, and then there are certain other things as well, the negatives or the consequences for not discussing this topic openly. So the first point here is that sexual relations, this issue, to discuss it, to learn about it, to talk about it, is not against the teachings of Islam. It does not go against the teachings of Islam. We see, and some of you may probably know that I actually have a book on this topic, Islamic Guide to Sexual Relations. I just actually picked it up. I have it with me here. And, I've written about these topics in quite detail. But this is why in the introduction, because when I had to write this book, I was actually very, very fearful. Very concerned as to what response or feedback I will receive. But then, inshallah, alhamdulillah, I consulted some of my teachers and elders, and when I got the green light, that this is something that's not that we should shy away from. And many early scholars have written about this topic in a very explicit manner. And this is why in the introduction of the book, I actually, first and foremost, I talked about this. I said, look, Islam is, of course, full of haya and modesty. But Islam does not shy away, does not neglect this very important aspect of marriage, because Islam is a comprehensive way of life. So whichever part of Islam does not shy away from it. There are details. If you look at many classical scholars, Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah, he actually, in his Ihya Ulumuddin, he actually has a full discussion on the sexual behavior of husbands and wives in his book Ihya Ulumuddin. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah has talked about this. Imam Ibn Qudama the Hanbali in his Al-Mughni, Imam al-Nasa'i in his book Ishratul Nisa, many others, Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani rahimahullah in his Sayyid al-Khatir. Lots of these great scholars, they actually have specific dedicated chapters in their books. And then later on, some of the scholars wrote specific books on this topic in the Arabic language. There's a really famous book in the Arab world, Usulul Mu'ashara al-Zawjiyah, Shaykh Muhammad Kan'an. A very good book on this topic. And there may be some in the Urdu language as well. And a few books maybe in English as well. I mean, there's a very small booklet that one of our scholars from South Africa wrote on this topic many, many years ago. But there was a need for a detailed discussion. So, and not just these books, if we go back all the way back to the Qur'an and Sunnah, there's clear guidelines, like explicit discussion of this in the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not shy away from it. He would describe this topic explicitly. Like, for example, when he was mentioning the ruling of when ghusl becomes fard and necessary. He said, this is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, إذا جلس بين شعبها الأربع ثم جهدها فقد وجب عليه الغسل. Look, how explicit can you be then saying, when a man sits amidst her four parts, his wife's four parts. The scholars of hadith then actually go and discuss in detail, what does the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam mean? What is he referring to? Shu'abiha al-arba'a, four parts. And they have a couple of, or two, three different interpretations. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used this. فَقَدْ وَجَبَ عَلَيْهِ الْغُسْلُ. When a man does that, then ghusl is wajib on him. There are examples where companions came to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asked about these matters in an explicit manner. Even sometimes female companions. Sulaym came to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Ya Rasulullah, inna Allah la yastahi min al-haq. O Messenger of Allah, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not shy away from the truth. And significantly, this is actually the next slide, but significantly, when these topics are being discussed, yes, this is important, that before it, there's always a reminder. In the hadith, always, or more or less, in many verses of the Qur'an or the hadith, there's this reminder of haya. So look, this companion, Sulaym, came to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she said, O Messenger of Allah, inna Allah la yastahi min al-haq. Before I ask him a question, yes, indeed, Allah is not shy away. Allah is not shy away from the truth. You don't shy away from the haqq, from truth, from learning about deen and Islam. And then she asked a question. You see this theme in the Quran as well. Wallahu la yastahi min al-haqq. Actually, in a hadith where the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking about the unlawfulness of anal intercourse. He said, "Inna Allah la yastahi min al-haq, la ta'tu an-nisaa fi adbarihinna." Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not shy away from the truth. And then he mentioned what he had to mention: do not have anal intercourse with your spouses, with your wives. So this is a very, very important discussion. We should not shy away from it. We should talk about it. But of course, as with everything, this discussion must be done with decency, with decorum, with haya, with adab. This is what is important. You know, there's a statement of one of the great tabi'i. His name is Mujahid. He said, it's in Sahih al-Bukhari, لا يتعلم العلم مستحي ولا مستكبر. Two types of people do not seek knowledge. Two types of people do not gain knowledge. One is a mustakbir, a proud and arrogant individual, and the second is mustahi, the one who is shy. If we are shy, we are not going to learn knowledge. Whether we're shy because we don't want to ask about this issue, or we don't want to sort of be embarrassed about it, then we will miss out. You know, like they say that, there's another thing as well. If you're going to be shy, if you're invited for food at somebody's house, if you're shy, you lose out. Yeah, so when you're invited for food, don't become too shy and start not eating and feeling embarrassed that they might think I eat too much. And then if you do that, you're going to just remain hungry and go back home and eat again. So the harm is done to the person who's shy. These things need to be discussed, and this is why. But the point is, with haya, with adab, discuss this topic, learn about this topic, but with the spirit of haya, with the spirit of modesty, with decency. Even Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, نِعْمَ النِّسَاءُ نِسَاءُ الْأَنصَارِ لَا يَكُنِ الْحَيَاءُ يَمْنَعُهُنَّ مِنْ أَنْ يَتَفَقَّهْنَ فِي الدِّينِ. That how admirable are the women of Ansar. Haya did not prevent them from seeking a deep understanding of religion. This is what Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said. Anyway, so this was just like an intro, and this is, I'm sure everybody knows that this is important, and that's why they're here. And now I have a few things that we want to talk about, very importantly. Intimacy, and I'm specifically referring to sexual intimacy in marriage. Now, we've said that this topic is actually very important, without a doubt. But of course, some people might say, like, why do you want to just talk about sex? Is marriage just about sex, 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 sex? Is that what marriage is about? Of course not. Nobody's saying that. Marriage is not just about sex, but it is about sexual intercourse. Sorry, I'm using terms which are explicit because this topic is specifically designed for this particular purpose, and this is why I have to be explicit. If I was talking about another topic and then maybe this kind of just some discussion slightly like I had to refer to it or give reference to it, maybe I might not be that explicit, but because everyone knows beforehand what this subject is about. And inshallah, we will do it with haya and modesty. Lots of people say, and actually, subhanallah, I just remembered now that I think this happened before as well once, but even this Rayyan Institute, this particular webinar for today, when it was advertised, I think it was tweeted or I retweeted it or somebody tweeted it or I don't know what, but I saw it somewhere, I can't even remember now. Somebody put a comment down. You just talk about sexual intercourse in marriage. Do you have anything better to talk about when people are dying in the world? Subhanallah, that's what somebody put on. And this has actually come before as well. Actually, not just about sexual intercourse, even marriage. I remember a few years ago, somebody invited me to deliver a marriage course, and the poster was put, and someone said, people are dying in the world, and the only thing that you guys want to talk about is marriage. You know why these kind of comments come about? The reason why these kind of comments come about because we many of us, and this is actually very important. I've actually realized this on many places, that there's this wrong sort of understanding, a very like a we've misunderstood marriage in Islam altogether, not just sexual intercourse. We've misunderstood marriage. Actually, yesterday I had a day, like a few hours seminar on marriage, and I actually spent an hour and a half just this point. I said everything else, leave it. Maybe second time, third time, we can do another series of these talks. But this is a fundamental point that I really would like people to understand. All these misunderstandings, all these type of comments only come about because we've misunderstood what marriage is in Islam. We've misunderstood what marriage is in Islam. Marriage is not a worldly, mundane activity. Marriage is not your regular worldly act. Marriage is an ibadah. It's worshipping Allah. It's a form of ibadah. It's a means of getting close to Allah. Marriage, the more you work at your marriage, the more ibadah you are doing, the more you are getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are attaining proximity to God. It's all good deeds. A lot of people think it's a worldly thing. No, it's an Islamic thing. It's a religious act. It's a means of becoming close to Allah. It's an act of spirituality, and this is what distinguishes Islam from other faith communities, where sometimes religion is something else. It's in the church or in whatever it is. It's just worship. Whereas other things like marriage is a totally social contract or a social act. Islam says no, marriage is a religious act. Marriage is ibadah. That's why when we get married, what happens? We read the khutbatul hajah, the verses of taqwa, there's hadith, there's du'as. All of this because marriage is a ibadah. It's like any other ibadah. It's a sunnatul mu'akkadatun marghuba. It's like highly emphasized sunnah in normal situations. For some people, marriage actually becomes fard and wajib. But in normal situations, it's actually sunnah. So this is a highly emphasized sunnah. The Qur'an says that every prophet except two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them marry. Every one of them. I can't recall the verses right now, the verse, but there's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ sorry, I can't recall it. But every prophet except two. One was Yahya, peace be upon him, and the other, Isa, alayhi salatu wasalam. And even him, the hadith say, when he shall return, he will marry. So in Islam, Islam does not agree with the concept of monotheism, like, celibacy, rahbaniya. Marriage is ibadah. And therefore, anything to do with marriage is an ibadah itself. The more you nourish your marriage. Some people think, like I was telling yesterday, the day before yesterday, some brothers, that what happens is that marriage is an act of ibadah, and the more you nourish it, the more you work at it. Sometimes people think, like, I had a talk in a university a couple of days ago, and the title was Balance Between Deen and Dunya. I actually made this was a poster. The whole talk I said to them, you know what? There's no need to balance between Deen and Dunya. For a Muslim, everything is Deen. Your religious, your study with 2-3 conditions becomes Deen. So I said, it's Deen and Deen. There's no Deen and Dunya. So we need to realize this. Sometimes we think, oh, you know what, I'm spending too much time with the family and with my husband or with my wife, now I need to go and all that time you were spending, you and your spouse sitting and holding hands and being intimate and kissing one another and embracing and hugging, all that time, if it's for the sake of Allah, to fulfill the rights of your wife, to fulfill your rights of your husband, if you do that for the sake of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah, with this niyyah, with ikhlas and sincerity, all of that is ibadah. You're not involved in a dunyawi activity at all. This is the fundamental point that people need to realize. You're not involved. It's not like, oh, you know what, I need to sacrifice my pleasures of the dunya, marriage. Like, I need to sacrifice and go and work for deen. I tell young people, like some brothers, they, when they get married and they say, like, I want to serve the deen. I'm giving too much time at home. Like, no, brother, you're giving time at home. That is ibadah. Balance it out like different types of ibadah. You don't just keep on doing zakat. You don't keep on just doing hajj 24 hours. You pray salah, sometimes you do zakat, sometimes hajj. So yeah, balance it in this way, different forms of ibadah. Sometimes you're doing the marriage ibadah, you're nourishing your marriage ibadah. Sometimes you're nourishing your tahajjud ibadah. Sometimes there's tilawat al-Qur'an. But you don't always do tilawat al-Qur'an. With moderation, you do tilawat al-Qur'an. And then you go and like spend like 2 hours, embracing and hugging your spouse and talking and whatever. Like, it's all part of Islam and Deen. And this is why when these kind of comments come up, because lots of people fail to realize that this aspect of marriage. Now that brother who said, you guys only have like people are dying in the world, or there's so much more important things in life than talk about in Islam than talk about marriage. No, there isn't, because yes, just like someone's talking about salah, would you say that if there's a like a flyer going on, and somebody advertises that we're going to have a talk on the importance of prayer, will you say, oh, is that the only thing you can talk about, like prayer, when there's so much far important things to do in the world, or there's lots of people dying in the world, and you're just talking about salah? Exactly the same. You're talking about marriage. So when we understand this, that marriage is ibadah, everything to do with marriage becomes ibadah. Even sexual intercourse. Yes, marriage, like the first point, there is more to marriage than the mere gratification of one's sexual needs. However, even this becomes ibadah. And this is actually from the hadith. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the famous hadith, what did he say? He said, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةٌ. That even one of you engaging in sexual relations with their spouse, this is an act of sadaqah. It's an act of charity. You're giving charity. Sometimes you're giving charity with wealth and money, but sometimes you're giving charity by having intimacy with your spouse. So, yes, there is more to marriage than the mere gratification of one's sexual needs. Without a doubt, marriage is not just about sexual intercourse. There's much more to marriage. Yes, marriage is about love. Marriage is about companionship. Marriage is about caring and sharing. Marriage is about spending life together, bringing up, raising righteous, pious children together. Marriage is about helping and supporting one another emotionally. Marriage is about, financially supporting, like the husband financially supports the wife. Really, it should only be the financial husband. That's his responsibility. If the wife wants to help a bit, alhamdulillah, but she doesn't have to. So this is why, when we look at the definition of marriage in the books of fiqh, they say, aqdun. It's a contract. Marriage is a contract. Yet, aqdun yufidu hilla. This is a contract. This is the definition in fiqh. What's the definition of marriage? They say it's a contract that results in the permissibility of istimta', the permissibility of deriving benefit for both spouses. Like this is basically it's a contract which results in the permissibility of the man deriving benefit from the wife and the wife deriving benefit from the husband. Okay, and then the scholars explain what type of benefits. There's different types of benefits. Financial benefit, emotional benefits. A companionship benefit. All these benefits. So marriage is a contract that gives this benefit both parties. The husband derives benefit from the wife, and the wife derives benefit from the husband. But I will tell you one point here, which a lot of people, sometimes, listen to this point. What I'm just going to say to you, inshallah. You see, all those things, all those means of deriving benefit in marriage, if you look, every single form of benefit can be, it's a very important point, every single form of deriving benefit, like the list of things I've mentioned, but all the different ways of deriving benefit which are listed in marriage benefits, these benefits can be derived outside of marriage via other people, except one. If marriage gives the benefit of financial help, then you can financially derive benefit from someone else. Your father can support you. Your mother can support you. Your brother can support you. Your sister can support you. Your friend can give you financial benefit. If it's emotional benefit as well, you can get that outside of marriage. Sometimes a woman finds much more emotional benefit from another woman because the husband's not giving her, the level needed of emotional sort of support. Sometimes the husband gets it somewhere else because he's not receiving that level of emotional support. So you can get that emotional support from a friend, from your mother, from your parents, even from your children, from lots of people. So financial benefit can be gained outside of marriage. Emotional benefit can be gained outside of marriage. Companionship and friendship, again, you can gain that outside of marriage. You can have a really nice, close associate friend you can share your secrets with, etc., and they're very loyal to you. Friendship, so friendship can be gained outside of marriage. Companionship can be gained outside of marriage. Someone to travel with. Yeah, lots of people don't travel with their spouses nowadays, but someone to travel with can be gained outside of marriage. All the benefits of marriage can be gained from other avenues. There's only one benefit out of the list of benefits which can't be gained outside, and which is sexual intercourse and sexual relations. That's only in marriage. So that makes sexual relations stand out. Yes, there's more to marriage than the mere gratification of one's sexual needs. There's more to marriage than that. There's all these emotional aspects and companionship and friendship and etc. etc. But just this point, what I've just mentioned to you, this shows the importance, the great significance and the importance and the relevance of sexual intimacy, sexual relations. Intimacy plays an important role in a successful marriage. Okay? And that's why we see that many marriages fail due to problems in the bedroom department. Many marriages, they fail why? Due to problems in the bedroom department. Yes, that is true. You might say, what? Marriages fail due to problems in the bedroom department? Yes, definitely. Look at the next slide. At times, although other reasons are pinpointed as the cause for marital breakdown, the underlying reason is sexual dissatisfaction, frustration, and unhappiness. And I'm not just saying this like this. I'm saying this also because this is in our literature in books and I've read this in places. But I am telling you this from listening to or dealing with cases firsthand experience of dealing with cases over the last 10, 12 years. So this is not just theory, this is practical. Many cases, at least 9 or 10 cases I've dealt with, seriously, that marriages have failed. There's divorce. Now, what these 2 points actually collectively refer to or tell us is that, look, it's not going to be like very explicit or very open that this is the root cause, this is the problem, main reason, this is, the underlying reason for the marriage breakdown. No. That's what I said here. Although other reasons are pinpointed, sometimes it's not like they're hiding. Sometimes even the couples themselves don't realize. Sometimes the couples don't themselves realize that this is the main core reason of disputes and problems is this, problem in the bedroom department. Sometimes they don't realize themselves. Why? Because what happens is that, this is why they say a couple happy in bed, happy in marriage. A couple sad in bed, sad in marriage. What happens is when there's dissatisfaction in the bedroom department, seriously, this is really important. Speak to the psychologists and experts and whatever. They'll tell you the same thing. In a marriage, when the couple are they're dissatisfied, there's frustration, dissatisfaction, there's unhappiness. Sometimes, it's a woman, sometimes a man. Like if the woman, for example, is not satisfied in her sexual relationship with her husband, the husband is not fulfilling her needs sexually, she gets frustrated, her mood goes bad, she has mood swings, she gets frustrated, then that result triggers something else, and then she'll complain about that, and she'll argue about this, and she doesn't know that this, or she herself doesn't realize maybe that what the reason is, because this frustration and this mood swing and this verbal abuse and this nagging and this shouting and this, complaining about every other thing and screaming is because she's sexually frustrated. This is the reason why she's sexually frustrated. And this is why when a wife or when a woman, the same type look, maybe like as an example, if the husband does something which, like, let's say is slightly inappropriate, or the husband hurt her feelings slightly, like he saddened her or he, did something. if that same thing that the husband, if he does, okay, straight after the husband and wife have been intimate and they've had sexual relations, right? If they've had sexual relations and the same thing the husband does, the night before, at night they've had sexual relations, in the morning the husband does that, whatever he was not supposed to do, or he did something, or he left something, or he made a mistake, whatever, whatever example you want to think of. And look at that example, how the wife deals with that. And the same after another time when the husband and wife have not been intimate the night before or just before. And they haven't been intimate for like many days, 10, 15 days. And that same mistake, or same scenario, and you will see a massive difference, generally speaking, in the wife's response and attitude towards that. Because when you've had a successful, pleasing, satisfying, union through sexual relations, then it automatically makes you forgiving. It automatically, you overlook things. This is why, any two people living together is the most difficult thing on planet Earth. It's difficult. We can't live with one another because we're all different. What makes it slightly easy? Like, look, imagine any random two people living together, sharing the same house and sharing the same room and the same food and the same earnings and like everything, sharing. Very, very difficult. But one of the things that really helps is in the marriage when the husband and wife are sharing everything together is because they are intimate. That's number one. And number two, of course, there's barakah because you've done aqd of nikah and Allah gives barakah through the aqd of nikah. And then if you have taqwa in that marriage and etc., many other things. But this is one of the things. So therefore, what I was saying that many times the problem is the underlying reason is problems in the bedroom department, but lots of people don't realize. They actually they don't realize that's the root cause of the problem. And sometimes people do realize. That's what I said. Out of a lot of experience with dealing with many marriage cases and divorce cases, they will not mention it openly, clearly. Sometimes they might mention it to the spouse, but they're not going to say like, we had divorce because he wasn't satisfying me in bed. Yeah, people have haya, of course. Not going to be. You can't even mention it to like your parents maybe. But he doesn't fulfill my needs. But people get frustrated, and this is what I'm saying. Like the wife is saying that because sometimes this is another point that in some communities, sadly, they feel that this sexual intimacy is merely the right of the man. I don't know where that came from. Who said it's just merely the right of the man? It's the right of the man and the woman. Yes, indeed, in most cases, generally, the man has more of a sexual need than the woman, but in some cases, the woman has more needs. And it's the right of both spouses. And I'm telling you, I've had cases where, where I remember many years ago, there was a sister and she was married and she said that, I can't remember, it was long, I think many years ago, 5, 6 years ago, but that after 4 months of marriage, the first 4 months, the husband was having intimate relations with her, but after 4 months of marriage, he just stopped having any intimate relationship with her, just completely just stopped. And I think it was like 4 years. She said in 4 years, he's not touched me. And she was just saying that I've done sabr, patience, and I'm now, I don't know if I could carry on doing sabr, but would you advise that for the sake of Allah, I just do sabr? I was saying, until now you've done sabr, that's like you're a waliya of Allah, like 4 years. I mean, Islamically, she has a basic right. You just go and get your marriage cancelled, annulled, because that's a basic right. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes the women, they just play hard to get, and they just, let me make him suffer. Like, I have some brothers, like there was one brother who's emailed me once, and like he was so upset and so distressed, and says like, my wife doesn't let me touch her, and she's always saying, no, I don't want you to touch me, and I don't want you to come close to me. This is all haram, unless there's an absolute genuine need. Otherwise, whether it's the man or it's the woman. The hadiths talk about the woman, right? That the woman who doesn't fulfill the needs of her husband and the husband is upset, etc., then لعنتها الملائكة حتى تصبح. The angels curse her until the morning. There's also hadith like وزوجها عنها. Yeah, similar hadith that if the husband spends the night upset and unhappy, and distress because the wife refused him, then Allah sends curse, the angel sends curse. There's another hadith that even if you're busy, وَإِن كَانَتْ عَلَى التَّنُّورِ, even if you're busy cooking, like you just have to leave everything. And this is just showing, all these hadiths are showing the importance, the significance of intimacy. It's not just about the husband. Some people, some non-Muslims, they think that this is just about the husband, that, the husband's right. No, it's like the wife's right as well as the husband's right. It's both people's right. So it could even result in the breakdown of marriage. Okay? It could also result in the breakdown of marriage. So this is why it's very important that we give importance to this, inshallah. Now I have some advices, because time is flying by us. There's so much you can say about this. Some points like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a few things, and then it'll be ended. So yeah, this is, inshallah, we'll cover it. Point 1, until now, was like the importance of this. Point 1, I want to explain this to you, inshallah. Both spouses must constantly work at nourishing and maintaining a healthy sexual relationship. Before that, I will mention one thing, because I'm sure there are a lot of non-married people, maybe as well, who are just about to get married. I think maybe there's more married people, but this is actually for the non-married people who are about to get married and maybe looking to get married. But this is for them. The married ones, don't start thinking about like, oh, why didn't I do this like before marriage? And like, could I now? Like, no marriage is perfect, and that's why you just have to nourish it. But before nourishing, this is a point. It might seem a bit not strange, but it might come across as like, how do you do this? Because this is a question. When I teach a course on marriage, and I remember earlier on, like when the Rayyan Institute started, like one of the first earlier courses, I think the first or the second course I taught on the fiqh of marriage. It was detailed, relative detail, and I delivered a course I think many years ago. I don't know, 3 years ago or something. And since then, this is the first time again that I have had the opportunity to be with you through Rayyan Institute, and the honor, privilege, and I apologize to the people who are running Rayyan Institute for not being able to accept many invites of giving a course, etc. But in the marriage course, when I talk about when we discuss things to look for in a spouse, when we discuss that, there's many things like when you look for a spouse, you should see first is deen. تنكح المرأة لأربع لمالها ولجمالها ولحسبها ولدينها فاظفر بذات الدين. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, get married based on deen. Get married based on like piety, religiosity. What is deen? There's a comprehensive understanding of deen. That what is deen? It's not just like a certain act of salah or just certain way of dressing, etc. Deen is a very comprehensive way of life, and it's quite detailed. This, it's not a marriage course, that's why I don't want to go into it. But we look at when you are looking to get married, you look at deen. That's one very important thing. Number 2, you can look at attraction, jamal, which is beauty, and the third thing, and this is where I discuss this, that we look at also we look at compatibility. We look at compatibility. Kafa'a. Compatibility, then I divide compatibility in few categories. Okay, I'm just getting to the point. There's no time to explain all of this, but when we go through a whole course, we talk about compatibility, and in the compatibility, we say, what is compatibility? What to look for compatibility? Compatibility in interest in life, objectives of marriage, sort of different, same type of sort of interest and interest and goals of life, etc. Not necessarily, compatibility does not necessarily mean you have to be part of the same caste or same, like ethnicity. It may help, but it's not necessarily compatibility, etc., etc. Last few years, I've added one extra thing. compatibility, maybe in age or maybe in like outlook of life. All of these things are there. Okay. Compatibility in terms of, yeah, there's an intellectual compatibility that's out there as well. That we need the two spouses intellectually, they need to be at the same level. Sometimes you get somebody who, two people getting married and they're intellectually like completely different. One just doesn't understand the other. One's on one level of intellectual capability and the other is on another level of intellectual capability. Causes problems in the marriage because like he speaks and she doesn't understand what's going on, or she speaks and he's not to understand anything. It can cause problems. But anyway, we have all these compatibility. The point I'm going to want to make is this: that what I've added here, that we should also look at sexual compatibility. You might say, what? Sexual compatibility? Yes, sexual compatibility. Because sexual intercourse is a very important part of marriage. It's not the be-all and end-all of marriage, like we said, but it is a very important part of marriage. And when it's a very important part of marriage, there has to be some sort of, it helps to have some sort of sexual compatibility between the husband and the wife. What I mean sexual compatibility is like a lot of people, every one of us, we have different levels of what we call sexual desire, shahwa, the sexual libido, the desire. Some people have an extreme level and some people have a lower level. Now, what can cause problems in a marriage is when one of the spouses has a very high level of sexual desire and the other has a very, very low level of sexual desire. That can cause a massive problem. And I've had cases where, for example, the husband has a very high level of sexual desire and the wife has a very, very extremely low. So the husband is frustrated. And the husband, this is in the first few months of marriage, I think, if I remember correctly, the case. I can't remember now. These are all like cases that I've dealt with in the last 10, 12 years. I can't remember when. Time flies nowadays. There's something you think happened yesterday, it happened probably 10 years ago. So you just can't keep track of days and months and years nowadays. The husband wanted his needs to be fulfilled, like at least, I think it was every so often, once a week or twice a week or whatever, I can't remember. But the wife was like, for months, I remember that, months, she just could not. Okay? So, to find out the level, right? There's a $1 million question after this, which maybe I think somebody has probably already asked as well. And this always comes, every marriage course, people ask this. And which is, so before the question, that we need to find out the sexual compatibility, right? So, and not just the level of sexual, but just like what kind of person this person, sexually is, because sexually, this is I can't really go explicit in this, but like how a person is sexually, a woman or a man, it's a personal thing, right? So it's good to get that compatibility. When there's compatibility, sexual compatibility. To not be too explicit, but maybe something slightly, like for example, one of the spouses loves a lot of foreplay. Let's say that. Okay, foreplay. In my book, I have a whole introduction on foreplay. Right? It's not only women who love foreplay, even there's lots of men who love foreplay. Some people think it's just women. This, foreplay is very important. So, for example, there's one of the spouses, whoever it is, let's say a man. This husband, he likes to have a long foreplay, like, he just wants absolute, like, level of foreplay. This is his way of being intimate. And without foreplay, he's just like, he feels frustrated, and he doesn't want a quick, session of intercourse. And the wife maybe like, she's like, okay, just quick, get over and done with it. This is the job. Like making babies. Let's do it. Let's make the babies. This is a factory machine. Let's just do it. And there's other things to do. It's a problem. This will create problems. So small things like this. Sexual compatibility is actually very important. Now, the $1 million question, brothers and sisters, is how do you find out that there's sexual compatibility? Every time when I talk about this in marriage courses, I think yesterday somebody asked as well, where I delivered the course. that, well, how do you find this out? The answer is, I don't know. You might think, why did you then bring this up? I brought it up so that at least we realize, look, there may be a way. I'll tell you briefly. It's a very difficult one. It's not possible really to find out explicitly, properly. You can't just meet to have a, when you meet one another, get married, and you say, by the way, sister, okay, what do you like, in bed? Do you like foreplay, or do you like? Of course, you can't do that, right? It's difficult. But if it's possible through third-hand party, like a third party, sorry, if it's possible to sort of try to find out some details, inshallah, about, just like for example, if you have a sister and that sister has a friend, like you're a guy and you want to find out you have a sister and that sister has she's a friend or friend of friend, and someone close to the sister who's a friend, and then some close friend without her knowing the why it's being asked that what kind of person she is from a sexual perspective, and then she relays the message, and then she relays it to her friend, and then to her brother, and then to you, whatever. Then there's some way like that, you can get to some sort of understanding, inshallah. Because people do open up to the friends, like not too much. Of course, it's not good to be open up before marriage, like just general, without talking too specifically about things. That this is the type of things I like, and in the current modern culture, the non-haya culture, people talk about all of this, like it's graphic details in a haram way. They talk about it. What do you like? And all graphically, it's completely totally haram. So if we're doing it for a good cause, for an Islamic cause, for an ibadah, for a worship, we're doing it so that our marriages are good and our marriages remain healthy and prosperous, so that we worship Allah and we get close to Allah. Then inshallah, hopefully, they shouldn't be wrong. Inshallah, ta'ala. If it's for the right intention, this is for marriage. We're not trying to find out the sexual. Yeah, if it's then just find out, and then you don't have the intention to marry. You just want to find out the details of some woman and some sister or some guy, and of course that's haram. So if it's really for the sake of Allah and really for marriage, then inshallah a bit of details could help. Now, therefore, this is for people who will be for marriage. Those who are already married, they must constantly. They must constantly. One second. They must constantly work at nourishing and maintaining a healthy sexual relationship. Okay. How do you do that? Well, look, brothers and sisters, married brothers and sisters, don't make your marriages boring. Don't make your marriages boring. Marriages, of course, can't remain exactly the same how they were on day one. Day one, first night is different to the second night. Second night is different to the third night. Third night is different to the fourth night. Fourth night is different to the fifth night. And next month, and the month after, or the year after, like you've been married for 10 years, of course you're not going to have that crazy sparks, like that was there right in the beginning. You decrease in a bit of lust, yes, not a bit, a lot of lust you decrease, but your love increases. Love increases. That's why marriage is a bond of love. With love, the intimacy comes. This is another point as well, that if there's no inner bond of love, then the mere external just gratification sexually, and that doesn't remain. That's why when there's no deep love, which is based on the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and love of deen, and love of being close to Allah, then relationships break. So of course it will decrease, and it will decrease by age. Like if you're in your 20s, then you'll be different. You get into your 30s, it's different. You get into your 40s, different. They say the ages, whatever. You might do some research on this, how active people are sexually. Actually, I was reading somewhere that actually older people are more and more being active sexually. So somewhere I read this in the news or somewhere, I can't remember, very recently. So it will be different. However, both parties must work towards nourishing and maintaining a healthy sexual relationship. Don't take it lightly. Number one is things that become a barrier. Those things that are like that put the spouse off from intimacy. Those things need to be avoided. This is like maintaining a healthy sexual relationship, right? So like being dirty, being filthy at home, smelly, things like that. It's not good. Especially like sometimes when they go outside, people they remain clean and at home, like because we take it for granted, we are neglectful at home because we're just at home, but it actually has a very direct impact on your spouse. If the man or the woman is just like always smelly, dirty, bad odor of the mouth, bad odor of the body, and dirty clothing, and then all the time just you stay dirty, then this is actually going to be very, very negative, this towards this sexual intimacy. And this is why there's a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used to do siwak, brush his mouth. He used to brush his mouth not just for salah and for wudu, but even when entering the house. Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, what did he do when he would enter the house? The Sahabi asked that بأي شيء كان يبدأ النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل بيته. When the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم would enter the house, this is Sahih Muslim, what would he do? What would he start off with? Like, what was his first action when he would enter the house? So Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, bistiwak. He would enter the house and brush the teeth. Why? Is he like praying salah? Is he doing wudu? No, because why? Because he doesn't want to harm his spouse. He doesn't want to he wants to have a pleasant smell in the mouth. Maybe he's going to kiss his spouse. So, we've just like come out from outside, and some people have eaten anything, and onion and garlic and whatever, and smoking and whatever, and then we've got a smelly mouth. And it's not good. That's why these things, nourishing and maintaining a healthy sexual relationship, it's important to remain clean for men, for women, tahuru shatrul iman. That's why hadith says, things like the women should, clean their bodies as frequently as possible. When the man is outside and when he's coming back, then he should not come suddenly. The hadith says, حَتَّى تَسْتَحِدَّ الْمَغِيبَةُ وَتَمْتَشِطَ الشَّعِثَةُ. That so that the woman whose husband has been absent, she can remove her body hair, pubic hair, and the disheveled woman can comb her hair. So all these things, nourishing, whatever, like you're 10 years married, 12 years married, don't neglect it. Just look after yourselves, look after your health as well. Whether you're a man or a woman, like, okay, sometimes health-wise, it's very difficult, right? Like some sisters, they've had given childbirth, etc. It is difficult, but just, don't take it for, don't neglect it. Don't take it for granted. It doesn't matter, like, whatever, that's it. I'm having children, whatever, Sometimes, look, I'll be open about it. Sometimes putting on a lot of weight, whether it's a man or a woman, it's not a woman issue or a man issue, it's anyone. It's beyond your control. It's in the hands of Allah. You're not being neglectful. You're trying your best, because Islam places a lot of emphasis on healthy eating, healthy diet. It's actually an obligation. The hadith says, إِنَّ لِنَفْسِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ وَلِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ وَلِدِينِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ. Your body has a right over you. Your spouse has a right over you. One of my teachers, Sheikh Mufti Uthmani, hafidhahullah, he actually has mentioned somewhere that just like it's fard for you to pray and give zakat and do hajj, these fara'id, daily exercise and maintaining your health is actually a fard from the fara'id of Islam. It's an obligation upon every Muslim. This is an obligation, one of the fara'id of Islam. So, as a man, do exercise, go for a jog, play sports, healthy exercise, have a healthy body. And as a woman as well, don't take it for granted, because it's going to affect, it's going against maintaining a healthy sexual relationship and nourishing the relationship. It's going against it, right? So, therefore, maintain your health. Like if a wife gets really big, I know a lot of men, they get put off, like they complain that they, super like big in her weight. If it's not in her, on her, because of her own doing, and she's trying, then look, this is nothing wrong with it. I'm not trying to sort of, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings with this, because this is a very sensitive subject, because look, it's beyond the control of some people. So, sorry if you might be hearing an adhan. I'm actually sat in an office in a masjid on the second floor, and it's actually nearly Dhuhr time here, so that's why I'm You might hear this, so I apologize for this. It was not supposed to be here, but this was last minute. It was decided that I deliver this webinar in this office. So these are, the nourishing and maintaining a healthy sexual relationship. Number 2, sinful and indecent acts and thoughts, such as pornographic material, not lowering the gaze, casual and flirtatious interaction with the opposite gender, etc., generally dampen a healthy relationship. Okay? Now this is a very, very important point. Very, very important point. How much time? Yeah, it's 1 o'clock. This is the second point here. One of the very one of the most negative things, one of the things that causes a lot of harm and damage to the intimate, to the sexual relationship of the spouses. Probably the most destructive aspect to having and maintaining a healthy sexual relationship are these things, sinful activities. Let me explain this to you. When a man and a woman in marriage, husband, wife, when they are acting upon the teachings of Islam, they have taqwa. Basically, taqwa, this is the third point as well. Taqwa and having a connection with Allah helps maintain a healthy sexual relationship. But point 2 and 3 are connected. So basically, point 2 is avoiding the haram, and point 3 is like the positive aspect of it. This has a direct link, has an absolute direct link with the intimate relationship of the husband and wife. Because marriage is based on taqwa. Now, when in a marriage, any of the spouses, the husband or the wife, either one of them, when they are engaged in sinful activities, when they are engaged in indecent activities, any haram, and we're talking about any haram, but specifically those things that have a direct link to the sexuality of the man, the sexuality of the woman, in any way, shape, or form. I've given a few examples here, and I'll give you like 1 or 2 other examples as well, and 1 or 2 scenarios. But this has a direct link. It breaks the marriage. It has a direct link to the sexual intimacy, and then that actually results in a marriage breakdown altogether. First, the intimate relationship breaks down. That's why many times when sometimes couples, when they phone me, or when they talk to me, email me, when they talk about a marriage problem, and when they describe certain things, I always ask this question: that is the intimate side okay as well? And many times they say no. That actually the intimate side had gone a long time ago. That finished. Like I remember one sister, I asked her, and she said, "Oh, well, that's finished. That department of the marriage is finished." I said, if that's going to finish, of course, all these good things are going to happen. And the reason why that side of the marriage, the intimate, the sexual side of the marriage finished, because that husband had a chronic illness, disease of sexual deviancy. And this is actually more of a male problem. How many marriages have broken down? Seriously. How many marriages have been destroyed because of the indecency, because of the deviancy, if that's the right word, or because of this sinful, diseased nature of the man. Sometimes it's the woman as well, but a lot of the time this is more of a man issue. Some men are chronically, they are diseased. They need help, seriously, and they should not get married before. If they are in this kind of situation, they should not get married. They should, like I said yesterday in a course, that before marriage, maybe 6 months, go through a therapy treatment. Because some men it's a disease. And they think, like lots of men, before marriage, like things like, for example, having multiple relationships. If there's a person before marriage, let's say an example of a man, multiple relationships, he's had like 6, 7, 8 girlfriends, clubbing, pubbing, or whatever, and he's having short-term relationships here, casual relationships here, and he has this disease of like multiple women, and a lot of these young people, and they think, what, when I get married, alhamdulillah, that's the day I'm the wali of Allah. But what they realize is after 3 days they go and do the same thing. Like, what happened, brother? You thought you were going to become the wali of Allah when you get married, because they think, oh, you know what? Let me just play around until I get married. When I get married, inshallah, I'm sorted. I'm the wali of Allah. But what happens that even after their marriage, to the point that I know a particular case that the night before marriage, the guy, and this happens, but the night before marriage, like the guy, is doing zina. This happens with our many non-Muslim friends that they go to. They call this something, I don't know. There's a name for something they do, and they go like last time, I'm not sure what, but they do something. So, but just before marriage, people are involved. If they are involved, then this actually has a very negative. This is what I tell young people, that before you get married, if you have these sexual problems, then what you do is live a life of taqwa, live a life of piety, live a life of decency, live a life of religiosity, live a life of God consciousness, absolute purity, and live a life of purity for 6 months. And once you get a habit, you form a habit of purity, of taqwa, of decency, of piety, then get married. Don't just go into marriage with all these diseases and these bad, ill habits. So, because it's going to be destructive to the marriage. If someone has a habit such as pornographic material, seriously, this is such, and I think you had a course as well. I think Rayan delivered this course. I think, if I see it correctly, it was recently, or I can't remember when, but I did see something being advertised. So I'm sure you must have learned a few things. This is such a disastrous, or such an evil, filthy thing. It actually becomes addictive, and it destroys marriages. Seriously, destroys marriages, because what's happening? Porn gives you this artificial, imaginary image. It's like sexual deviancy. And seriously, what can I tell you? I've had cases. There's so many cases, right? When and these cases are mostly wives and women, but sometimes when a wife or a woman emails or phones or whatever, I know what she's going to say. Like, she starts off her marriage problems, and then I know what she's going to say. Somewhere along the line, yeah, he's having an affair. There's another woman. It looks like every married man is having, and that's what I said yesterday as well. I think 60-70% of Muslim married men had something on the side, whether it's a girlfriend or whatever, secret wife, or people have all sorts of things. But they have all these things. But a lot of the times, I remember one case where I could not even believe this. I was shocked. And then when I read upon this, then I understood afterwards that the wife was saying that she catches her husband, she's caught her husband 2-3 times, that they are sleeping on the bed, right? Sleeping on the bed, and while she's dropped off to sleep, she just opened her eyes and she saw her husband next to her, watching porn and masturbating himself, sorry to be frank, and relieving himself right next to her in the same bed. I'm thinking, this was many, many years ago. I was thinking, what is it? I mean, how could someone do that? Okay, it's haram anyway, but if you can slightly understand, slightly, not really, but slightly understand if the guy was not married, or his wife was away for 6 months, gone somewhere, and but this is the wife sleeping right next to him. And I think I asked as well, were you on menstruation or anything like that? And she actually, I remember saying that, look, he refused me. He doesn't have intimacy. Yeah, I remember this correctly, clearly. That he deprives me of my intimate relations. He hardly shows any interest, maybe once in a while, but hardly shows interest. But I catch him when I go to sleep, he's doing this. What's wrong with him? Because this guy is addicted to porn. He can't fulfill his needs. There are people. You talk to the medics and you talk to the experts, and I've done a lot of research on this. There are people, there are husbands, there are men who find it difficult to, sorry for being frank again, they find it difficult to be aroused. They find it difficult to be aroused. They find it difficult to have an erection. Okay, they have a problem in that department with their own wife. But if you put porn in front of them, then they have no problem. Seriously, if you do research, you'll find this. If you put like some pornographic material, they will able to sort of be aroused. It's really bad. That's why this is filthy. It's evil. Porn is evil. It's filthy. It destroys your deen. It destroys your dunya. It destroys your brain. It destroys your aql. It destroys your intellect. It destroys your health, your wealth, your everything. It's just like it's poison, right? It's poison. Really, for the sake of Allah, if you know anybody, I'm sure no one here is inshallah involved, but if you know someone, just like really, really, they need help. People need help. Masturbation as well. It leads to masturbation. Masturbation as well, if it's before marriage, if you have a habit of masturbation, then like seriously, I know a case, I remember, and I've mentioned this in many marriage courses. Many years ago, there was a brother who came to me, old man sat in front of me, in his 60s, and he told me that, you know what, I've had the habit of masturbation since in my teenage years, since I was like 16, 17, 18, and now I'm in my mid-60s. Till today, I still can't stop masturbating. I'm a father and a grandfather, still I have the problem. Some people think, you know what, after when I get married, I'm going to stop doing all this. No, brother, sister. You have to stop now. These things will kill off intimate relationship. Casual, flirtatious interaction with the opposite gender, not lowering the gaze. These things have a direct impact. If a man, if a husband or a woman, but mainly a man, if he's looking outside at nudity and he's looking at, nakedness, then that has an impact. He can't have that pure, intimacy with his wife. It's difficult because that's based on purity, like your whole mind. Because when you're looking at nudity, you're looking at your gaze is outside, then some part of your desire, your shahwa is gone there. You need, what we need to do in a marriage is we need all of our sexual desire to be focused on our spouse, every bit and every inch of it. That's why they say that the more the pious the people are, like some people say that the pious people, they have more shahwa, more desire, because it's true. I mean, and there's no hadith or whatever, but you can, some of the great awliya of Allah, and that's why the prophets, why did the prophets, Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the most, there's a hadith to this effect, I can't remember the reference right now, but he had the most, power. That's why he had many wives, because that he was needed, because he had the ultimate level of piety. That's why the more piety there is, the more sexual desire there is, because it's just channeled and used only on the wife. And if it's not used on the wife, it's gazes here and nudity is there and a flirtatious conversation there and a nice joke with another female there, and then you're scattering this shahwa of you're spreading it out everywhere. Whereas Islam says dedicated fully to your husband, fully to your wife, like exclusively, all of it, like has to be for the wife, has to be for the husband. And when it is solely exclusively for your spouse, then inshallah it really, really helps. It becomes very fulfilling. That's why the more pious you are, the more, they say the more pious you are, the more close to Allah, the more you stay away from sins, the more you lower your gaze, the more you avoid flirtatious conversation, interaction with the opposite gender, all these things, the more you avoid it, the more sexually active you are with your spouse. Seriously. The more you avoid sins, the more sexually active. It lasts with you until a very old age. You could be in your 60s and 70s, and mashallah, your sexual life is like, amazing still, because all your life you stayed away from sins. Nowadays, people, they get in their 30s and 40s and like struggling in their sexual relationship. Many, forget 30s, 40s, like I have young brothers like in their 20s, late 20s, mid 20s, early 20s, people like, they're struggling. Why do they struggle? Because of all these indecent things that people do. That's why we need to stop all of this. Have taqwa, have connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, build a connection. Somebody said, what was the second point? I'll answer your questions inshallah at the end, but I can't remember the second point. Abstain from, like, we have these slides here from porn, from pornographic material, anything to do with porn, any indecent image, like try to keep your gaze as low as much as possible. Today it's very easy, like, social media, people's pictures, YouTube, just like anywhere, indecency comes up. And it's a real struggle for all of us, but we have to really try. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. The next point is, so these are the 3 points of advice. Number 4, one of the main objectives, these are some advices. One of the main objectives in sexual intimacy is to fulfill the needs of your spouse for the sake of Allah Most High. It should be done about, this is actually a very important point. If we want to make our intimate relationship, sexual relationship in a marriage gratifying and prosperous and beneficial and really good, this is, brothers and sisters, do not take this point lightly. This is a very important point. This is very important. 5 and 6, I'll make it short because we'll have like 15 minutes left. Very important point. That, when we get married, a lot of people think about themselves. This is just general in everything. We live in a society, we have this disease, we all, it's me, myself, and I. Me, myself, and I. Everything is like about me. What are my rights? Forget about my responsibilities. Like every time a wife phones, like, what does he have to do with me? What are my rights? The husband says, what are my rights? Like, forget about your rights. Think about your responsibilities. And this relates to even the sexual relationship as well. Sexual relationship, sexual intimacy, the whole objective, the main objective, if we want to get reward from Allah, this is something that should be done in every aspect of life. If we want reward from Allah, if we want that to be an act of charity, actually, Allahu A'lam, it seems, Allahu A'lam, Allah knows best. I haven't read this from any commentary of the hadith book, so Allah forgive me if I'm mistaken, but this came to my mind before once and I mentioned it, and this is the second time I'm mentioning it. So the hadith that says where the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that even sexual intimacy with your spouse is sadaqah, charity. I feel, Allahu A'lam, that why he said it's charity, because what is charity? Charity is benefiting others. Perfume is charity because you're with your good smell, others are benefiting. You give zakat, it's charity. You're helping the poor and needy. Sadaqah, these are all charity. You're helping poor and needy people. It's what you're giving. It's giving. So the charity is all about giving. So why did we call sexual intercourse charity? Allah knows best, but I personally feel is because it's about giving. It's not about your own pleasure. It's about giving. One of the main objectives of sexual intimacy is that you think that, what? How do I please my husband? How do I please my wife? Like, you want to, not about your own pleasure. The whole idea is what pleases her? Like, do you like this? Do you like that? It's all about you, wife. And the wife thinks, okay, I'm a bit tired today, but what does my husband love? Okay, he needs his needs fulfilled. Yes, for the sake of Allah, that's why I got married to you. If we have this approach in marriage, then all these problems arguments, is there rape in marriage, is there no rape in marriage, and does my husband have a right, crying about basic, petty issues in marriage. These things all go away because you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the pleasure of Allah, for the sake of Allah. It's all about giving. It's all about oh, my husband, how can I make my husband happy? How can I just be as much be a means of gratification for my husband? I am there to please Allah and give everything to my husband in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the attitude people should have in every aspect of life, in every aspect of marriage, and then specifically even in sexual intercourse. And number 5, time is short, it is important to prepare both psychologically, physically for intimate relations with one spouse. This is actually a very lengthy point, but I don't need to explain this. I pointed out that I have a book on this topic, and I have a whole discussion on this subject, about preparation. So you could read it there if you can find it somewhere, inshallah. But things like preparation, when I say psychologically and physically, psychologically is when husbands and wife, when they're planning to sort of have intimate sexual relations, then they should psychologically kind of prepare. So psychologically meaning just exchanging words, etc. As the days, coming close to the end, if it's at night or they want to be intimate, expressing different words, good words, etc. Yes, someone is saying PDF of book is online. I know it is, and I don't know if the publishers are really happy with that because it's a copyright. So, but anyway, it's to do with the publishers and others. But And this book, subhanAllah, someone said, gave it to wedding gift. I know everyone gives the book to everyone as a wedding gift, and I just, alhamdulillah, I just got an email yesterday from a sister that there's actually some people who are translating it into Russian language as well. It's actually already been translated into Germany. 3-4 years ago, German, it was translated, it's published in German, Islamic Guide to Sexual Relations. So this is the one. Sorry, I don't know if Ryan Institute, if I can advertise. I'm not advertising, I'm not selling it, so but this is the book. I actually have it with me here. And then also, I know there's been a translation. I think somebody was doing it in Sri Lankan, somebody was doing it in Malaysian language, and somebody was doing it. Italian's also been published, I think. And I have none of these copies. The people who translated, they promised that they're going to send me a copy, but nobody sent it to me yet, so I don't know what's happening. But anyway, let me just, there's no time. This, like preparation, psychological preparation. I have a whole chapter here, look. It says here, if you can see, I don't know, this is not my laptop, but I don't know if you can see. It says here, this. Preparation. Preparing for sexual relations, like, you know, preparation of the wife. Number one, I've talked about cleanliness and personal hygiene. So we've already discussed that, about, you know, that body odor, have good smell around you, remove hair, etc. Number two, adornment and beautification. This is all preparation of the wife. Then I've got all the Quranic hadiths and you know, Quranic verses and hadiths relating to this. And then what type, you know, like preparation, like wear nice clothing, adorn yourself, good, pleasant smell, fragrance, etc., etc. And then there's also, I've got, you know, something here. These are some ways of preparing. And then for the man as well, again, cleanliness, personal hygiene. The man has to also, remember, sometimes in marriages, some men think that only the woman has to adorn herself and you know, be clean. The man, okay, doesn't have to go to an extreme length of adorning himself, but the man has to remain clean and pure. You know, otherwise, if he's dirty, smelly, some men think that, you know what, I just come and I just smell like anything, like onions or whatever. And, you know, I just come from work and I've just had a smoked cigarette, and then he wants to jump on his wife with like a dirty smell coming out from his mouth, and I just had a cigarette. I mean, like, how can even someone sit to somebody who's had a cigarette? So, you know, we need to realize these things. Cleanliness and personal hygiene is very important. So all this type of preparation, there's lots of hadiths, and then there's things about how to look after your body, your hair, etc., inshallah. So anyway, and point 6 is never neglect foreplay. I've already sort of highlighted, pointed towards this, never neglect foreplay. I have a whole chapter here as well. Point 6, foreplay. Foreplay is very important. There's actually foreplay is important, and after intimacy as well is important. Maybe you can add number 7. That's also important, but foreplay is actually very, very important. It's not good to just look, okay, you know, sometimes you have more time, sometimes you have less time. This is, of course, sometimes, you know, where you don't, you know, you have a lot of time and it's very relaxed sort of setting. It's a weekend, for example. Then yes, you know, you could spend a lot of time foreplay between husband and wife, and you know, having a longer session of intimacy. And sometimes you don't have that much time, but still, it is important not to neglect foreplay. Foreplay, I mean by foreplay, is sort of, you know, the act that precede the actual sexual intercourse, the actual penetration, you know, all the sexual activity that precedes actual penetration. The verbal expression of love is also included in this. And there's so many hadiths. You know, there's a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He talked about this. He said, "Tula'ibuha wa tula'ibuk." You know, you should play with her and let her play with you. Play. There's there's a hadith, وَمُلَاعَبَتَهُ, it's about play. So foreplay has been discussed a lot. So all the things, like I'm sure everyone knows, I don't need to explain all of these things. These things, I talked about more in detail, the things that really require explanation. But these things, like we all know, like whatever it is, it's embracing and kissing and hugging and touching and feeling and etc., 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 whatever, you know, it doesn't need explanation. So, you know, these things, like in my book, I've got like, massaging and caressing and like lots of things based on many evidences of the Qur'an, Sunnah. And then there's all of this is allowed. Look, remember, don't think the point again, going back to the first point, do not think that you are doing anything dirty. People like, like, how can I do this? It's like, this is ibadah, it's sadaqah, it's ibadah. People need to realize everything will become, easy to understand. Someone thinks, like, how can I do this? Like, some people get involved in this act of intimacy reluctantly, like, I need to do that job, like, let's quickly do it, and like, now let's get back to astaghfirullah stuff, they might even read astaghfirullah after intimate relationship, right? So, other sister, you're not doing zina, you are doing an ibadah, an act of sadaqah, like, enjoy it as well. There's nothing wrong, like, don't do it. Like, this brother actually said to me that I feel very reserved, like I feel I'm doing something like bad. I was, no, enjoy it. Enjoy it. There's nothing wrong in enjoying this act. It's very important. So once we understand this, then we will not neglect foreplay. We will not neglect foreplay, inshaAllah ta'ala. So all of these things in terms of foreplay are important. And now, in terms of rules, there are just some brief things, just 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll try to end and we'll take some questions and try to answer some questions, inshaAllah ta'ala. In terms of permitted and prohibited acts, generally, I've just tried to make this easy. Generally, most things are allowed with the exception of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. Okay, I'll just quickly explain this thing. If you want to know the absolute khulasa of what's allowed and what's not allowed, what's halal and what's haram, okay, it is generally everything's allowed. Okay, generally everything's allowed, with the exception of these 8 things. You might say, well, a lot of things are not allowed. Well, yeah, to an extent, a lot of things are not allowed. But if you look at what is allowed, then there's lots of things that are. If you look at what is not allowed, then you can see that there's a lot that is allowed. Number 1, it says here, sex during menstruation. Now, this is a whole discussion. Sexual intercourse between husband and wife, and the wife is on menstruation. And number 2, you can add it together. Sex during postnatal bleeding. Hayd is menstruation. Postnatal bleeding is nifas. The blood that exists after childbirth. During that time, it is haram and it is not permitted to have sexual relations. There's a bit of fiqh behind this. Maybe you should learn about it if you don't know. But like things like different madhabs have different views in terms of what is allowed. So many madhabs what they do allow is any sort of deriving benefits and enjoyment from above the navel of the wife and below the knees is perfectly permissible according to all schools of thought. So kissing is all allowed, and touching even intimately sexually below the knees is all allowed, and above the navel it's all allowed. In between the navel and the knees, generally it has to be avoided, but there are some opinions which are valid even in the Hanafi school and some other madhabs, based on some hadiths of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it is allowed provided it's on top of clothes. Now, the summary of this is that if someone does not feel comfortable, they feel that, look, even if we start messing around like on top of clothes, not messing around, sorry, because it's charity, like I shouldn't use a bad word for it. If we start, trying, well, because it's charity, but now it's not charity, it's haram right now. Yeah, sometimes an act of ibadah becomes haram. So you may think, like, why is it haram? Yeah, do you know, can you fast on Eid day? No. If in Ramadan, when you fast, if you don't fast in Ramadan, it's haram. If you fast on Eid day, it's haram. The same fast became haram on Eid day. Salah at sunrise, sunset, and istiwa time when the sun is in the middle, zenith, salah becomes haram. So yeah, even salah can become haram sometimes. So sexual intercourse is an act of charity, ibadah, but yes, at this time Allah has forbidden it. Is considered to be lawful. So during hayd and nifas, it is haram, it is sinful. So the khulasa is like on top of clothes between navel, and if someone is confident that they will be able to control themselves, then fine. In that case, it may be permitted. Otherwise, you should avoid it totally. Number 3, intercourse. Of course, everyone knows this is totally, clearly, totally, utterly forbidden. It is haram. There's numerous. It's in the Qur'an, and many. So this is totally haram. Number 4, to an extent oral sex. Now, this to an extent oral sex, why I've said this is a very important discussion, because, and I have a discussion in my book about this, because lots of people ask on this, but look, generally it's best to avoid it. It's best to avoid it. You see, because this is a very explicit discussion when you've just entered it about oral sex, that generally it's best to avoid this, because it just goes against decency. It goes against morality, and sometimes these type of things. It's more to do with the what I was talking about earlier on, the deviancy, the deviant aspect of the brain. Like people have sort of seen things. This is why. Like some people think that whatever they see outside, like they want. This is actually not good. Okay, husband-wife relationship has to be very good, the wife, but some people, they want their wife to dress like the model they saw. Like they were like driving past on the billboard, and they saw this like woman dressed in, like short skirt and some, what is it called? I don't want to say, but whatever, short skirts and some things, whatever. Okay, I don't want to say something, whatever. But and that's it. Now he's got that. Now he'll say, I want my wife to be in the bed as well, and she's dressed like that, and she's. This actually is not good. You might think that you're doing it halal, where you're making because you're basing it on your image of that woman. You see that oral sex somewhere outside or something, and you want that to happen. Then this is going to be negative. The relationship between you and your wife has to be real. It has to be pure. It just has to be you and her. To imagine someone else's, it's actually haram. I've got a discussion in the book. To imagine someone else is actually haram. It has to be pure. If it just happens purely, then it's different, but it has to be a pure relationship. This is a deeper topic, and this needs to be discussed, and thought about more. But to an extent, I said, because look, if it involves, any sort of impurity coming into the mouth, then it's totally, completely haram. It's not allowed in Islam. Okay? Without impurity coming into the mouth, like if someone does it by avoiding impurity coming into the mouth, then there is a bit of difference of opinion. Some say it's dislike, some say it's allowed, and some say it's still haram. But I think the most opinion is that it's disliked. Yeah, it's not haram. Permissible, the dislike is better. Number 5, sexually provocative dancing with music. Like a lot of people ask this. Yeah, this like with music and the dancing of the lewd people. Again, this is going back to what I was saying. Because you're looking at some lap dancing and you want your wife to be a belly dancer and a lap dancer, because it's all deviancy. It's like because then it's a different way you're approaching your wife's your husband or wife relationship. And then when you get bored of that, today you want her to be a lap dancer, then you'll be bored of the lap dancer, then you want her to be a belly dancer, then you're bored of the belly dancer, then you want her to be like I don't know, whatever dancer, some different dancer, and then you want her to be something else, and this is sexual imagination, and it is very, very negative. Make your sexual relationship pure. It's pure, without these outside thoughts. That's why, look, number 6, watching pornographic material together, haram. So that's definitely haram. Number 7, public display of affection. A lot of people, they, of course, doing any sexual act is totally haram, but again, why do you need to show everybody? Like, okay, people ask, can me and my husband hold hands? Like, look, the ruling is that if you're in an area where it's not common, then you shouldn't. If you're in an area where it's okay, people don't notice it, it's not looked at like to be disrespectful, then it's permissible. But in most cases, I would avoid it. It's not good. It just goes against, being lovey, do a lovey-dovey business in your bedroom. The sister with hijab and niqab and a brother with thobe and, hat and a beard, and holding hands, being lovey-dovey. Go into that in your bedroom, honestly. So, and number 8, revealing details to others. A lot of people have this habit, especially our sisters. Sisters, don't go and tell your friend or whatever, oh, what, we did this at night, and we did this, and WhatsApp, dude, and then what did you do? Dude, what did you do? Oh, and then he said this. Really? Dude, what did you do? This WhatsApp. Anyway, it's haram. To reveal details is absolutely, totally haram. Sexual details. You can talk about oh, he was nice to me, he gave me a gift, inshallah. But again, don't mention any details, honestly. Keep things to yourself. It's you and your husband, you and your wife. It's not like a time to tell people details about yourself, about your personal life. People like to put every aspect of the detail. Facebook picture, me and my husband, me and my wife, we're doing this. And why do it? Benefit yourself. Like, why are you trying to make everyone jealous for? You know, being jealous of others is haram, and to make others jealous is also haram. You know, listen to this. To be jealous is haram, and to make anyone jealous, like, oh, we did this and we did that, and then someone's like, burning inside, and like something. Anything could happen. People can have negative thoughts. People get jealous. People then, they bad evil eye, anything. So just keep things private. Like, enjoy your life, your benefits to yourself. There's no need to make a public announcement of whatever we do. Try to keep things private, brothers and sisters. Some etiquettes of the first night. This is just you can read on this, inshallah. I'm going to end with this. First, etiquette of first night is very, it's a very important part. Normally when you enter people who are not married, so you greet with salam, you recite the dua. There's normally a dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka khayraha wa khayra ma jabaltaha alayhi wa a'udhu bika min sharriha wa sharri ma jabaltaha alayhi. You read that dua when you enter. Good to recite Surah Al-Salah, make dua to Allah, and then it's good to touch the forehead of the wife. The wife can touch the forehead of the husband. Both of them make dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka khayraha wa khayra. This dua is just said with touching of the forehead. خيرها وخير ما جبلت عليها, and the wife will say خيره وخير ما جبلته عليه until the end. And then light-hearted discussion. If you want sexual relations, no problem, have some foreplay. If you don't have to get to the actual penetration on the first night, you could do the second night. You've got your whole life, inshallah. You don't need to really, really hurry. Like, if you're not short of time, like, okay, you have to get it done. You can do it later if you want. If you want to also have ultimate sexual relations, fine. That's also not a problem. So this is how, inshallah, the first night is conducted. And yes, we have come to the end of whatever I had to discuss, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq, the ability to act upon some of these advices. And let's look at the questions, inshallah ta'ala. These are the questions, yeah? This is the chat. Like, what's this again? What's that? This one. This one. Okay. Yeah, you got off that side. I think, let me just look at it. MashaAllah, there's a brother here who is helping me. Please make dua for this brother. He's a very sincere brother here. I live in England. Some of you might know I'm from UK, but some of you might not know. I live in England, but I'm actually in the United States of America right now. I'm in New York. And this is a very nice brother, Abu Bakr, Muhammad Abu Bakr Iqbal, MashaAllah. It's his laptop, and this is the office, and it's really, MashaAllah, has helped me out today, because I'm not very tech savvy. Is that what you say? Yeah. So, inshallah, let's quickly look at the questions. Can you please ask this question on my behalf? Okay, I'm looking at it from here. If you've already typed up your message before this, then just type it out again, inshallah. But can you? My question is, alhamdulillah, I've been married for 16 years, never had any sexual partners apart from my husband, alhamdulillah. Where would a new bride or to-be bride get information regarding sex and sexual position, which is not haram to look at? For example, looking at pornography is haram. Looking at pornographic books is haram. Can you recommend any books to refer to? I'm not really understanding what this is, but books to refer to in terms of being addicted to porn and things like that. Look, there's maybe there was a course, like I said, there was a Rayyan course on porn, and I know there was, I don't know when, maybe ask the charge, inshallah, maybe if there's a possibility, if it's recorded, listen to the course again, and then maybe there might be some books highlighted. So, inshallah, that would be good. I have one thing in mind. There's actually a book written, and it's a non-Islamic book. It's written by actually a non-Muslim. She's a woman, American author called Laura Doyle. She's got a book called Pornified. Pornified. It's actually a very good book, and it's worthwhile reading it, looking at how bad it is. She's done a lot of research on this topic, and that really helps. Inshallah. Let's look at some other questions. May Allah allow us more opportunities, inshallah. Inshallah, I don't know what that was about. How does one find out about compatibility before marriage? I answered that. How does one inquire? Again, I answered that in the talk. How one finds out about compatibility. What was the second point? Abstain from? I think it was in the porn, casual relationship with opposite gender, uh, lower, not lowering the gaze, in anything indecent. Part of the book Islamic sexual relations, yes. Someone said Jazakumullah khairan, Grand Institute, Jazakumullah khairan, yes, to you as well, inshallah, all the people, Mulana Hamoud and everyone else. Look, there's a pornography, addiction, effects and remedies. That was the course, inshallah. That would really help, inshallah. What is the ruling on covering up during the act of intimacy? Yes, good question. We should cover up as much as possible. But you can, just if there's like, you mean covering up your bodies? Okay, yeah. Look, it's not necessary to have sexual intimacy in your clothes. Okay, it's not necessary. There's nothing wrong. Seriously, actually, some scholars say it's actually better to be naked. It's not like, oh, if you're not, you don't have to. But what is decency? Look, if you're totally naked and there's nobody else seeing in the bedroom, then you're not committing any haram. But what's superior is, despite being naked fully, but you put a sheet over your body, right? That's good. That's adab and that's respectful. If you don't do that, it's not haram, but it's maybe slightly disliked. So it's better to just cover your whole bodies, but you don't have to actually wear clothes. How do you talk to your spouse about body flaws, acne, blemishes, scars, before establishing relations? Look, some things are beyond. Look, you have to understand. Some things. Look, if you have decided and agreed to marry someone with these things, or it happened afterwards, then inshallah you may have this love. These things you can't, some things are beyond your control. I was talking about, health-wise, something within your control. Some things are beyond your control. And then if you're going to make that as a matter, then you have to try to overlook that, right? Whether it's a man or a woman, any blemishes. Some people have different flaws, like different people. You can't be too specific. Not everyone's going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect physically. Nobody is. Somebody's tall, someone's short, someone's like whatever. Somebody's going to have hair. Bald, look, I don't have any hair. It's like kind of like anything. People have to sort of have some sort of but if something is within control, then inshallah. I missed the part on oral sex. Is that haram? Why did you miss it? I did say it, so I don't know why you missed it. I can't repeat it again, brother. Sorry. You may review the recording. Yeah. How would you tackle a problem of being married for 5 months that has causing frustration in both spouses? But not being able to reach the penetration stage? Good question. A lot of people ask this question. I think, I can't really answer this here because each individual case is different. Maybe, inshallah, if you know somebody locally in your, two people, you need a good scholar of knowledge and wisdom, and you need a expert, someone who is expert in sexual matters, and get help. Why you can't reach the penetration stage? Happens to a lot of people. 5 months, I know it's happened. I know a case where it's happened for 3-4 years. So this is a very, very delicate issue. Try to speak to a local scholar. Maybe you can talk to me if you want, email me, whatever. But talk to an expert as well about this, inshallah. And hopefully Allah will make it easy for whoever the couple is. I think she is asking about other sexual relations. Okay, I don't know what that was about. Not mentioning the name of Allah, like mashallah, bad when you uncover. If you've got a sheet over you, then you can. No problem. With regards to women dressing for the husbands in the home, are there any restrictions? No, not really. If there's nobody else in the home. Okay, if there's nobody else in the home. If you've got children, young ones, then you need to be careful. You can't just, if there's no children, it's just at home, nobody else is there, then the wife can sort of dress in any way. There's no restriction. How would we find more about sexual positions without looking at porn to spice up the marriage? I have mentioned in my book, and my book doesn't have any images, so maybe you can find out about that from my book. I've mentioned some positions without looking. So, look, you don't need everything shown image. Not everything. Somebody actually, subhanAllah, somebody actually said to me that, I want to, can I actually, subhanAllah, somebody actually asked this same question, that can I watch porn because I want to get educated about sexual. I want to get married. I don't really know how to like have sex with my wife. So can I, when I get married, I don't know how to have sex. Can I watch porn to learn? You don't need, you don't need like physical, images. Some things are learned, in writing, inshallah. So, okay, maybe just 10 minutes, inshallah. The next question is, what are the rulings on when ghusl is needed after relations? Is ghusl needed after foreplay that doesn't lead to intercourse? Look, just foreplay, there's no ghusl. But if there's penetration, even though it did not lead to actual gratification, there was no orgasm, still there's ghusl. So ghusl is necessary. The hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, إذا التقى الختان فقد وجب الغسل. إذا التقى الختانين فقد وجب الغسل. When the two private parts meet, like when the male organ enters the female organ, even partially, then ghusl becomes necessary. That's the mainstream opinion. There is another opinion that as long as there's no orgasm, there's no release of sperm, there's no ghusl, but the majority opinion is this, that whether sperm has been discharged or not, in any case, ghusl will be necessary. What is the ruling on sexual aid? I've got a discussion on this. It is best to avoid it. It's not really good. But you can't call it haram unless, as long as the husband and wives are using certain things and the whole basis of arousal, etc., is your spouse. It's not like, you're playing on your own and thinking about somebody else, etc. But generally, it should be avoided. What is your book called? Somebody already mentioned it, Islamic Guide to Sexual Relations. What's happening here? Why is the view that holding hands isn't allowed or is discouraged in public? It's not a sexual act or immodest, but rather as a form of innocent halal affection. One says, very, 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 very good question. I like this question. I actually have a whole article online somewhere. I've actually discussed it in detail, the fiqh of holding hands. I have a website as well, maybe some, where I write all the fiqh articles. I wrote this about 8 years ago. I divided the whole discussion of holding hands in public. I put it into 3 different categories. I said, look, it depends. Category 1 is when there is like a need to hold hands, like you're crossing a road and it's just just holding your hand, like you're doing tawaf or you're doing hajj, etc. And you just walk and there's a need. That's perfect, and it's very casual. It's a need, perfectly halal. The other side, so that's one. The other category, C, or the third situation, that's situation 1. Situation 3, and then there's a middle situation. So the other situation is where it's very intimate. It's done in a very intimate, not just casual holding of the hand, but it's done with just more like arms around one another and rubbing one another and doing all this whatever they're doing. Sometimes when you get newlywed, people try to do all this type of thing. It's showing a bit of sexual connection. The sexual vibe is in that type of holding hands. That's haram, because there's clear hadiths talking about. I didn't even mention them, but some real strict warning of doing any type of sexual, acts. Sometimes people don't realize this. You're sitting at home and you just got married, as a couple, you're newly married, and there's a couple and you're newly married, and your father-in-law is there or your mother-in-law is there. There's no haya, there's no modesty. You're touching each other's legs, and tickling each other and kissing and whatever. I'm like, come on. People do this, then they come out of it afterwards, and then they feel embarrassed themselves. It's not really good to do these kind of things. So that's number 3. The number 2, the middle category, is where there's no need, but plus it's not super highly sexual. It's just a casual holding of the hands, just close walking, but maybe okay, it's like full lock hand, walking like it. If it's just a bit, okay, that's okay in all situations. But like a full lock and just holding hands and walking. In there, I mentioned the ruling that this will depend on urf. In some communities, if you're in an area, in some locality, because a lot of the rules of fiqh are based on customary understanding. This is a qaida of sharia. There's evidences for all of this. I don't have time. I don't go into the details of evidences, but there's evidence for all of this. that lots of rules change based on the locality, the custom, the local custom, local urf. So if you're in the local custom urf where this is considered to be fine, like it's nothing, it's not considered to be sexual or immodest. It's actually very, and I've seen some localities, some communities, because a lot of places I've seen some places like in the Arab world, in Syria, for example, when I used to be there many years ago, like 50 years ago, when I used to study, and I've been there for a long time, like since 2002. I just have to make that here. And I've seen it in some different places where it's known. Nobody even thinks twice. It's not thought of sexual at all. Then fine. But if you're in an area, the local custom, and I've seen those areas as well, where the area is such, it's a conservative area, and the urf is, so the rule of Islam will change based on the urf, that it just, for anyone to do that, it's like nobody does that, and suddenly, there's a man and a woman, they just suddenly got married, and it's like, everyone looking, it's just like making it odd. Then that's when it becomes wrong and sin. Okay, so that's the khulasa of the is there any ruling on role-playing as a form of foreplay, creating a scenario? Again, good question, brother or sister, but this is, again, the sexual deviancy in the brain. This role-play, all of this, it's, this image or imagery, this head, it's not really good. It's not healthy. Because, when you're foreplay, when you're actually thinking of someone specific, that's totally haram. That's like zina of the heart. Totally. But if it's you're just, the foreplay, it's your spouse, but your spouse has become like a nurse, or your husband has become a policeman, or, role play, or whatever, I don't know. It's not nice. That's what I was saying, that the whole aspect should be pure. It has to be based on purity. It has to be them, for them. You have to, the arousal has to increase. We have to avoid all these deviances, then the arousal will increase. Then you won't need the need of like imagining her to be this or imagining him to be that or whatever. Avoid sin, live a life of taqwa, purity, connection with Allah, no sinful, activities. Then you will see we don't need all of these things to, inshallah, arouse us. Does white discharge in women cause due to, this women discharge issue is a very lengthy one. I really don't have time to explain. You can ask different scholars. Mufti Rahman ibn Yusuf is very good. Maybe you can ask him, about, he's one of the teachers on Rayyan Institute, and you also have his wife, Ustada I forgot her name, sorry, but she's very good with these kind of issues as well. Maybe she can explain to you in detail. I have an answer somewhere online, but this is very detailed. It's very complicated. Lots of sisters have issues. It's discharge. What's pure? What's impure? It does not wudu break. What's the break? Get it clarified properly from somebody. Don't get OCD. Don't worry about it too much. Don't get obsessed by it. Just get it clarified, inshallah. Can you clarify about oral sex? If I understood correctly, general opinion that is permissible, so as long as no impurity enters the mouth as a result. This is the same for men, for women, as well as women. Yeah, both sides, men, women, as long as, if any impurity comes into the mouth, then that's haram. If it doesn't come, then it's disliked. I didn't say it's totally permissible, it's disliked. How disliked? Depends on how much, like how far you go. If it's just casual, like kissing around the area, touching a bit of the lips on the genital area, then maybe slightly disliked. If it's a bit more, then it's more disliked. The more deeper you go, the more extensively this oral sex is done, the more dislike to the prohibitively disliked stage, and then to the extreme part where the impurity gets into the mouth, then it becomes haram. What's the best position to increase chance of conception? I'm not a doctor, brother or a sister. I'm not a doctor. You need to ask a doctor. Okay, so what is the ruling on a woman who had an orgasm without penetration of fluid released? Does she have to make ghusl? Yes, she has to make ghusl. If I'm correctly, a woman who had an orgasm without penetration, yeah, like like a wet dream. You had a wet dream, and there's ghusl. So yeah. Can you kiss whilst fasting? Again, there's a bit of details about can you kiss whilst fasting. There's details. It is permissible. Maybe extensive, deep kissing should be avoided, but that's also permissible if people don't think that they will eventually engage in sexual relations. At what point does sexual intimacy nullify your wudu? When the pre-ejaculation fluid comes out, muddy, then the wudu gets nullified. The toys allowed, I've actually already answered that. Sexual aids, etc. I think that's about it. End of the questions. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward everybody. I'm going to end because Jazakallah khair to all of you and Rayyan Institute and all the brothers and sisters who have attended today. Allah grant us the tawfiq, inshallah, to practice, to take into account what was discussed, inshallah. I ask you to make dua for me as well, inshallah. Hopefully see you sometime on another webinar, hopefully very soon, and not after 3-4 years, inshallah. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.